Yeah, weather is
Okay. Wait, so are the students ready now?
yes, please. They
Okay.
are very hello.
Okay. Yeah, I think as everyone is sitting down, we can begin today's lesson. Um, so yeah, today we will be learning about climate change and ecosystem. So you can see um, how much the world is changing today, mostly the climate. And then we will also learn about our ecosystem. And these two are directly related because we need a stable ecosystem during a climate change to compensate for that. But let's get into today's lesson. So, part one is climate change. And climate change is happening right now. And it's important to know the climate or the average temperature of the year is rising. And then the climate is being changed. So there are being a lot of rains, a lot of drought seasons. The temperature is rising again. There are more storms. There are more forest fires, and ice are melting in the North Pole. So all of these climate changes are happening today, and it's important to know that they are significant, and we can't ignore climate change. So today we will be talking about for climate change, what is climate change? What is climate change? What causes climate change? How climate change affects our lives? And what can we do about it? So these are the four questions that we will be talking about today. So, yeah. And I want to know the difference between weather and climate. The weather is the short-term state of the atmosphere. So the weather today, for example, is sunny, right? The weather today is sunny. But does the weather remain sunny all year long? No, right? The weather changes often. And the long-term pattern of weather is called the climate. For example, there is the tropical climate. Tropical climate is a place where the air is very humid, right? And it rains a lot. And this pattern is called a tropical climate. Tropical climate. So weather is the short-term state. Climate is the long-term pattern. Okay. So yeah, the weather is the day-to-day state of the atmosphere, and it's short-term fluctuations like being sunny, windy, or rainy. Climate is the average of weather conditions in a particular region over a long period of time, typically 30 years or more. So, for example, there is typically a lot of rain in the spring. That is defined by our climate. Right? So, you need to measure it for 30 years or more, which is a long period of time. Right? So, that is climate and weather. Uh, Now let's get into some of the questions that the BECE test on the environment. So here's just an example question. Uh, so it asks, the daily variation of atmospheric conditions is called a what? Based on what we learned.
B.
Oh, yeah, I'm hearing B. Do you mean weather? Yes, that's right. The answer here is B, weather. That's correct. Because we learned about the daily variation, right? It's not a um yearly or it's not a long time variation, right? Remember, weather is a short term variation, right? Short-term variation is called the weather. And climate is the long-term change. Daily means every day, right? Daily means every day. So changing every day is a short term, right? Short term. That's why it is the weather. Yeah. So the daily changes are weather. Okay. Now, now let's get into what is climate change, right? Climate change is the long-term change in the planet's average temperatures and weather patterns, primarily driven by human activities since the 1800s. Since the 1800s. It means the Earth is getting warmer. So the temperature is rising. This leads to problems such as stronger storms, melting ice, rising sea levels, and changes in rainfall patterns. Right? So it is an increase in temperature. So we can see in this graph right here on the right, what can you notice about the graph? So what can we notice about this graph right here? You can see, oops, starting from, around here, right? Around here, can everyone see the graph increasing, right? It's increasing. What is increasing over the years? The temperatures, right? The temperature. So you can see that the trend from, well, 0 AD until 2019 has been skyrocketing. It's been skyrocketing, meaning it's going really, really high. And this was around 1800s, right? 1800s. until the 2000s. The temperature has been increasing rapidly. So that's what the graph is trying to show you. And because of that, a lot of weather patterns change as well. So that was what the climate change was. And let's talk about some of the effects that makes the climate change happen, right? Why does the temperature increase, right? Why does the temperature increase? It's because of the greenhouse effect, called the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect is a natural process when gases in the air trap the heat from the sun. It keeps the earth warm enough for people, planets, and animals to live. But when there are too many gases, too much heat gets trapped. This makes the earth hotter, causing global warming. You can see on the left side, this is a healthy greenhouse gas, right? The solar radiation comes in as heat, right? Comes in as heat. The heat bounces off the earth, right? And then some of the greenhouse gases keeps the heat inside this bubble, right, of the earth. But look at over here. When there are more greenhouse gases, more re-radiated heat gets trapped. More heat gets trapped, so the earth gets hotter. So that is how the greenhouse effect and the greenhouse gases like CO2, greenhouse gas, CO2, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. CH4, I think, is also a greenhouse gas. H2O, or water, is another form of greenhouse gas. And NO2 is also a part of a greenhouse gas. So all these gases make the greenhouse effect possible. Let's watch this video, and this will explain some of the greenhouse effects that you would see on this. So let's watch this video together. All right.
What is
Okay.
at NASA Climate Kids?
Yeah, we have seen in this video, or learned a little more about the greenhouse effect, right, and how it works and why it's causing the Earth to warm up, right? It's like a greenhouse covering the heat inside. Okay. Yeah, global warming. Let's get to the term global warming. Global warming means the Earth is getting hotter over time, right? This is just the term for the Earth getting hotter, right? So global warming happens because greenhouse gases trap heat inside the air, and this extra heat changes the weather and climate, and problems like more storms and floods, droughts in some areas, melting ice, and raising sea levels. So you can see kind of the polar bears losing habitat, right? Because polar bears live on top of the ice, right? And many ice in the North Pole are melting because of global warming and temperature rising. So global warming is a term for describing this temperature change. Climate change is the more overall term that says the climate is changing. The type of weather and problems are changing because of climate change. But global warming is just the term for getting hotter. And the important part is that global warming, the part that makes Earth get hotter, causes climate change, right? So when the Earth gets hotter, the climate around the world changes. There are hotter temperatures, there are droughts, there are more frequent storms and floods, there are wildfires, and there are melting of the ice and rising of the sea levels. Remember, all of these are caused by global warming, by Earth getting hotter. These climates change. So now let's get into one of the BC questions. This was an active question in the year 2025. So last year, we had this question. Let's look at it. The rise in heat waves and floods globally may be due to the effect of what?
A. A. A.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing some A's. Climate change. Do you think it's climate change? Well, climate change is the rise in heat waves and floods, right? Floods globally. This actually defined is called the climate change, right? These are the climate change, right? But we are finding the cause of climate change. It says may be due to the effect of what? So the question is, what is climate change caused by? Does anyone remember? What causes climate change?
B. B.
Oh, I heard B, greenhouse gases. And yes, that is correct. The answer here, yeah, is B. Great job. Yeah, it's greenhouse gases. So remember that greenhouse gases cause rise in temperature. Rise in temperature. What does rise in temperature cause? It causes global warming, right? And global warming causes climate change, right? So, due to the greenhouse gases, it all leads to climate change. So, yeah, that's why the answer is B. Okay, let's move on to the next slide on the causes of global warming, right? And we've talked about how humans cause global warming, right? But how do they do that? Right? So humans actually produce a lot of greenhouse gases. Right? Humans are the ones who create, release carbon dioxide into the air and methane into the air. So humans are causing the greenhouse effect. So let's watch this video, and this will tell you what humans have been doing to Earth and what problems we are facing. So let's watch this video
Chipotle
together.
honey chicken is back. Grilled.
Yeah, so here in this video, we have watched, what humans have been doing, right? Have been causing the greenhouse effect and global warming and climate change. But at the end, it also talked about how humans are the ones to find the solutions, right? So you can see in this picture right here, there's a lot of um, greenhouse gases that are being released from the factories, right? As you burn fossil fuels or as you manufacture in a factory, they release a lot of greenhouse gases into the air. In the middle, it's a picture of agriculture, right? Or domesticating animals also require a lot of greenhouse gases because we've seen that, cow farts or animals release a lot of, methane and carbon dioxide into the air, right? So they cause a lot of greenhouse gases to appear into our atmosphere. And also burning forests, right? On the right. Burning forests cause um, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the air. That is really harmful. Yeah. So number one, again, is the fossil fuels. The cause number one, fossil fuels. So fossil fuels are great sources of energy when it is burned. However, they emit greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide that traps heat inside Earth and cause global warming. Fossil fuels are things like coal, oil, natural gas, kerosene, or propane. Those are what's being burned inside factories. The huge gases that they release, those are very harmful to our atmosphere because they are greenhouse gases. And cars too. Cars also release a lot of carbon dioxide because they use oil to move, right? They also need fossil fuel. So fossil fuel is one cause. And we use electricity from fossil fuels, right? So most electricity comes from burning fossil fuels that releases carbon dioxide and cause global warming. So that's why we use fossil fuels too, right? Because we need electricity. But using a clean, renewable energy, like solar, wind, or hydro, can reduce these emissions. So that is why people are more using the solar or the wind panels to supply their electricity instead of from the fossil fuels. Okay. Second cause is agriculture, right? Humans grow animals for food and materials. So we need cows for both food and milk, right? For its meat and the milk. So that is why we grow animals. But cows or other animals' fart or burp produces methane, which is a way stronger greenhouse gas than a carbon dioxide. So cows produce methane, and all of these are also greenhouse gases that are harmful to our environment, and they cause global warming too. So that's the second cause, which is agriculture or growing animals. Okay. The third cause is deforestation. In deforestation, it means you cut down too many trees, right? Here. Deforestation means cutting down too many trees, and it causes global warming, loss for animals, dry land, and soil erosion. And what is so bad about deforestation? Well, it cuts down trees, right? And cutting down trees is harmful because trees can take in carbon dioxide and produce oxygen by a process called photosynthesis. So, because we cut down the trees that can take in carbon dioxide, we are causing global warming by deforestation. So that's cause number 3. And there are more causes, right? Cause number 4 is from the plastic waste. Making and burning plastic releases greenhouse gases. And when plastic waste goes to landfills, it stays there for hundreds of years. As it breaks down slowly, it releases greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide. Plastic waste in oceans and land harms animals and ecosystems too. So, plastic wastes are causing a lot of harm to our environment. So that is why people have been using less plastic over the years to reduce these effects. And here's a picture on the top about burning and wasting plastics, right? All of these are plastics that are being wasted. That produces a lot of greenhouse gases. Picture below is burning of plastics. And burning plastic produces a lot of greenhouse gases. So cause number 4 was plastic waste. All right. So let's look at greenhouse gas emissions from a percentage, right? So how much or what is releasing the most greenhouse gases? Here, the highest number here is 34%. So 34% of the greenhouse gases in the air are released from our energy supply. So energy supply, like electricity, right, are huge part in releasing greenhouse gases because they burn through fossil fuels to produce electricity, right? So that is why it takes up 34%. What else are there? Industry, right? Industry takes up 24%. Industries are the ones who make things, right? Ones who manufacture, ones who make and send it to the people. Right? So as you make things, you also emit greenhouse gases a lot. 22% comes from agriculture, forestry, and land use. So this is agriculture and deforestation combined. produces 22%. Transport, like cars, buses, and everything, trucks, produce 15% of greenhouse gases. And buildings, I'm assuming making buildings or manufacturing buildings, is also part of 5.6%. Okay. So this is a question that was in, again, the BECE test of 2025. And this basically shows our natural cycle, and it has, industries and fossil fuels involved in this diagram. So let's look at this question together, shall we? All right. So figure 1A, this one, is an illustration of a natural cycle showing unnamed stages and processes labeled A, B, C, and D, with processes labeled P, Q, P, Q, S, T, right? And study the figure carefully and answer the questions here. So it says to name each of the stages labeled A, B, C, and D. D. So I guess the easiest part is to label C, right? C. So if you see this question on the test, you can look at what the C is, right? C. And it goes from C to B by animal respiration. So the animals um, gaining energy, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, right? So does anyone know who or what the C is? This one. Yeah, I think this one is a little bit more difficult, but for C, right, C, it says animal respiration. So we can safely assume that C can be animals, right? Animals or humans or, yeah, things like that. And they release carbon dioxide into where? Where do they release? Where do animals release carbon dioxide? Into the air, right? And into the air, into the atmosphere. So this is air or atmosphere, right? Atmosphere. Air or atmosphere. So animals, by animal respiration, releases carbon dioxide into the air. The rest can be kind of tricky, so I will show you the answers for A, B, C, and D. So A, it looks like it's going back and forth, right? So it must be plants, right? Whenever you see a back and forth, it shows an exchange, right? So plants take in carbon dioxide, release oxygen into the air. Right? That's why A's are plants. B is either carbon dioxide inside the air and the atmosphere. Right? Mhm. And then C are animals. C are animals. And D are dead organisms, right? Because they only stem from plants and animals, right? Notice how the factories don't point to D, right? This is not the case. That's not it. Because factories can't turn into dead organisms. So we can assume that animals and plants goes down to D, dead organisms. Okay. The next question, number 2. Name each of the processes labeled B, S, and T. Again, this is a little bit difficult, so let me walk through each one. So P, this one, the process of taking in carbon dioxide and producing oxygen is called photosynthesis. Q, this part, from plants producing carbon dioxide or animals producing carbon dioxide is called respiration. S, this one, the dead organisms going to fossil fuels is decaying. T, factories. How do factories produce carbon dioxide? Do you remember? It was by burning, right? So that is why the process T is called burning, because factories need to burn things in order to produce carbon dioxide. So these were the processes labeled. And let's actually answer this last question, number 3, together. So, can anyone state 3 activities of humans that could disrupt the cycle? What can disrupt this cycle based on what we have learned? Yeah, we learned about a few, right? Um, what
Fuels,
was, yeah, go ahead.
fuels for industries.
Oh, fuels from industries, right? Yeah, definitely. Fuels, as you produce more fossil fuels from industries, as they increase, yeah, this could disrupt the cycle that produces a lot of carbon dioxide. Yeah, that's great idea. Great answer. What else? Yeah, what else could disrupt the cycle?
Deforestation.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, great job. Deforestation.
Distra-
Yeah,
Destruction of aquatic lives.
yeah, destruction of life, right? Or destruction of aquatic lives, or destruction of lives. So they're both killing plants and animals, right? So deforestation is cutting down trees. When you cut down trees, there are less trees that can do photosynthesis. And photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide. So if that doesn't happen, there are more carbon dioxide, and that disrupts the cycle. And you also said animals, like killing marine animals or killing animals, can also disrupt the cycle, right? And yeah, great answers. So all of these are good answers. You said burning fossil fuels. Yeah, that's correct. Deforestation, burning woods and plastics. And there's also agriculture and raising animals, right? Remember, raising animals can also disrupt the cycle. We've talked about raising cows, right? Because cows fart has methane, right? Cows fart and burp has a lot of methane. So raising animals can also disrupt the cycle. Okay, great job. Let's move on to the next slide. So these are the consequences that can happen with climate changes. Over here, you can see there are more severe storms because a lot of raining is happening. Right? There are more droughts in some areas. There are more wildfires. Yeah, and there are floods too, right? And there are floods. It floods the area because there has been, too many storms, or maybe because of a tsunami. But again, these are the natural disasters that are caused by climate change. Okay. Again, ice melts from global warming, and this raises sea level, right? This raises sea level, and ice volume is being decreased. So polar bears are losing their habitats, and islands are sinking. There are impacts to human health too, right? Climate change can make people sick and uncomfortable. Hotter weather can cause heat exhaustion and dehydration. Bad air from pollution and wildfires can cause asthma and breathing problems too. And lack of clean water and food can lead to hunger and illness as well. And floods and storms can spread diseases and damage the houses. So climate change also causes major threat to the human health, our human health. Okay. Let's quickly answer this short question. So it says the consequences of the greenhouse effect on humans include what? What do you think?
B.
Yeah, did you say D? This one? One and two only? Yeah, or
B.
did you say C? This one?
Yes.
Yes, if you said C, that is correct. Yeah, great job. The answer is C, 1, 2, and 3. Right? So let's look at, 1, 2, and 3. Flooding of coastal cities, that's true, right? Greenhouse effects causes the flooding, the ice to melt, and the cities to flood. Desertification of fertile areas, droughts, they do happen more frequently. Increased number of storms, yes, that could happen. Increased use of fossil fuels, no, that is not caused by the greenhouse effect. Right? So it is 1, 2, and 3 only, which is C. Yeah, great job. Again. So let's talk about what we can do to protect our planet from climate change. Right? Can we fix our planets? So, let's get into some solutions to climate change. What can we do about it? Well, we can reduce car use. Right? Since cars burn a lot of fossil fuel, we can walk or ride bicycle instead, or use public transportation like buses, because buses carry more people with a single vehicle. So we can reduce car use. We can use renewable energy. So fossil fuel is non-renewable, which means that once it is used, it is gone forever. And renewable energy can be regenerated endlessly without burning fossil fuels or harming the planet. And renewable energies include, solar energy from the sun, hydro water energy, right, that you get from the dams, or wind energies, wind powered from the windmills. We can also save energy and save water. The less energy we use, the fewer fossil fuels are burned, which reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And saving water also helps reduce climate change because less energy is needed to pump, heat, and treat water. So, energy saving tips. You can switch off the electricity when you're not using it. You can unplug something, and you can save power by not using too much energy. Some other things that we can do is plant trees and save paper. Planting trees helps fight climate change by absorbing carbon dioxide and producing oxygen. Right? And since papers come from trees, using less paper or recycling paper can help protect forests and fight climate change. We can reuse or recycle. So making new products requires energy. So instead of making new products, we can reuse and recycle the items we already have. So that is why we use recycling bins, right? Because they can reuse the recycled materials to produce the new product instead of making a new product, which requires energy. That is why we reuse and recycle. Okay. We can reduce waste and not burn any sort of wastes, right? So burning trash releases a lot of harmful gases like carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. So we should not reduce we should reduce waste and not burn the waste down. Okay. So here is one more question about climate change that was in the BEC test last year. So let's answer this question. Which of the following waste disposal practices is best for plastic disposal? What do you think?
D.
Oh, are you saying D?
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, great job. It's recycling. And it says, plastic disposal, right? Plastic disposal is best for recycling, especially plastic, right? Because they produce a lot of carbon dioxide when they're burned, so it's not burning. It's not composting, since composting is turning food waste into soil. Incineration is also burning waste. So the answer is D, recycling. Okay. What about this question right here? Which of the following statements best describes the term green economy? It includes what? So green economy, remember, is an economy that focuses on protecting the environment and using natural resources wisely. So what do you think?
C.
Yeah, did you say C?
Yes.
Yes, that's right. The answer is C. Yeah, great job. It's reducing carbon emissions. So the rest of these options are not correct. Reducing ecological services? No, we don't want that for green economy. Loss of biodiversity? No, that's not green economy. And degrading the environment? That's the opposite, right? All of these are opposite of green economy. So the answer must be C, reducing carbon emissions, which is good for the environment. That's why it's green economy. Yeah, green economy is preserving ecosystem services, reducing carbon dioxide, preserving biodiversity, keeping the earth healthy. So yeah, these are green economy. So yeah, lastly for today, let's talk about the ecosystem. So we'll end today with ecosystem. But let's watch a video on what an ecosystem is. So yeah, here is the video on ecosystem.
Think safety. Think Granger. For trusted products to lock.
So yeah, the video was talking about the ecosystems and diverse ecosystems that exists. And it talks about some of the components too. But yeah, an ecosystem is a community of the living and non-living things. So living biotic, non-living abiotic things that interact with each other. This includes plant, animals, microorganisms, water, air, sunlight, soil, and everything. Right? For example, there is the forest ecosystem, pond ecosystem, desert ecosystem, and marine ecosystem. So all of these are ecosystems. And there is also a habitat, right? So habitat in an ecosystem is a place where an animal or plant lives. So this includes the home or living space of one species, right? And it is a narrower concept than an ecosystem. So there is an ecosystem, right? And inside the ecosystem, there are a lot of habitats inside the ecosystem where organisms live, right? For example, a polar bear's habitat is the icy Arctic region. A frog's habitat is near ponds. So the habitats can differ. Yeah, you can see here, everything included is called the ecosystem. Things like plants, soil, water, the solar radiation, animals, insects, fish, everything is inside the ecosystem. But we can look at a particular habitat of a certain species. So this is a habitat inside ecosystem. Inside the habitat, there are the communities of organisms. So plant community, for example, are over here. So yeah, let's look at this quick question. So which of the following statements best explains the term ecosystem?
D.
Oh, did you say D?
Yes.
Does everyone think it's D? Yeah, that is right. Yeah, it is D, a community of living and non-living, so living and non-living things interacting with each other. So yeah, that's the definition of an ecosystem. Pretty straightforward. Yeah. And let's get into what's called the food chain inside the ecosystem. So inside the ecosystem, a food chain shows how energy passes from one living thing to another. It tells who it eats whom in nature. So this video explains the food chain that we see. So here is the video.
The problem.
Video talking about the food chain and how energy, passes from one organisms to another. So that is what the food chain is about. So it is in a linear order, right? Passing nutrients and energy along the way. It usually starts from the producers, like plants. And then the primary consumers eat the producers, things like bugs. Right? And secondary consumers, like frogs, eat the bugs. And tertiary consumers are the ones above. Right? So, for example, the snakes eat the frogs. Quaternary consumers are the ones above tertiary consumers. So, like an eagle or maybe a hawk can eat the snake. So, energy goes in this order. So this order. Finally, when the quaternary consumer dies, they get decomposed, right? By the decomposers. Like fungi, mushrooms, they are the decomposers. Each of these consumer are called the trophic levels, right? You can increase in trophic levels. So producers is one level, primary consumer is the second level, and so on. So yeah, this is the food chain. So remember, number one is always the producers. It always starts with the producers. And remember, the producers makes its own food through photosynthesis. All they need is the sun, right? And water and carbon dioxide. They can make food. So producers need the sun to produce their food. And then there are consumers, all the levels of consumers, usually the animals or insects. Right? They cannot make its own food, so it must eat the plants or other animals to get energy. So primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary consumers all need to eat other organisms to get energy. Finally, there are decomposers, like mushrooms, bacteria, worms. They break down dead plants and animals into smaller materials. This process returns nutrients to the soil so that the new producers or plants can grow. So all three serve an important role in the food chain and in the environment in our ecosystem. So remember, producer, consumer, and decomposer. Okay. All right. Let's move on to this short question. So let's answer this question together. Green plants have the ability to make their own food. Hence, they are known as what?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think I heard producers, right? And that is correct. Plants are producers, again, because they make their own food by photosynthesis. So that is why they are the producers. Okay. Good job. Let's look at this question. So, a grassland ecosystem that consists of snakes, okay, snakes, toads, and grasshoppers is most likely to produce a food chain of what? So, yeah, can everyone try to form a food chain from these organisms? And grass, too. Of course, there's grass.
B. B.
You
B.
see, D,
No, question B. B.
B, right?
Yes, miss.
Yes, B is the correct answer. Yeah, great job. So, forming a food chain. So, of course, it starts with the producers, right? The only producer is grass. Okay, grass, two, grasshopper. they are the primary consumer. Toads are secondary consumers. Snakes are tertiary consumers. Yeah, grasshoppers eat grass. Toads eat the grasshoppers. Snakes eat the toads. Right? That makes sense. Yeah, great job. The answer is B. Okay. Let's move on finally to the food web. So, food web shows how different food chains are connected in an ecosystem. Because most animals eat more than one kind of food, all the food chain linked together like a web. So I'll show you an example here. This is an example of a food web. This food web shows how different organisms are connected by what they eat in an ecosystem. Let's have a hawk, for example. A hawk. A hawk can eat a snake, can eat the rabbit, and can eat the mouse, right? The arrows are pointing to the hawk. Yeah. What about the owls, right? The owls. They eat the mouse, they eat the frog. Right? What about this smaller bird right here? They eat the grasshoppers, but they get eaten by the snake, right? They get eaten by the snake. So the food web shows all the kind of interactions that are connected with each other. It tells you what eats what and what gets eaten, right? Everything connected. All right. Let's have this question. So it is a BC theory question. So it says the following information is on the feeding habits of some organisms. Use all the information given above, or over here, to construct a food web. So feed on means consume or eat. Arrows in the food web point from the prey to the predator, indicating direction of energy flow. So here is the completed version of the food web, since we couldn't build it off the scratch, right? But can anyone point me where number 1 is? Which arrow? Is man feeding on a grass cutter? Number 1 right here. Yeah, it's this arrow, right? It's this arrow over here. This is the man feeds on grass cutter. So I will, yeah, walk you through the descriptions together. So this is number 1. Number 2, toad feeds on grasshopper. Toad feeding on grasshopper. This is number 2. Snake feeding on toad. So snake goes over here, right? This is number 3. You see the arrows pointing to the snake? Yeah, that is number 3. Snake feeding on toad. Number 4, goat feeds on grass, which is over here. Number 4. Goat feeds on grass. Man feeds on hawk. Over here, this is number 5. Man feeds on hawk. Grasshopper feeds on grass. So it's over here. Hawk feeds on snake. Number 7. Over here. You can connect the arrows from the snake to the hawk. That means hawk feeding on snake. Finally, number 8, grass cutter feeding on grass. So yeah, these are all the processes labeled. But yeah, we couldn't, I guess, do them really well together because it might be a little time consuming to build a food rep. But here is just the completed version and me following through all these other options, all these processes. That is how you build a food web. And yeah, I think this is the completed food web based on the descriptions. But yeah, that is everything that I've prepared for today. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And do you have any questions about today and today's lesson?
How many types of ecosystem do we have?
Oh, you're asking how many kinds of ecosystems? Well, there are a lot of ecosystems, right? So it's not just limited to a forest ecosystem or an ocean ecosystem. So there can be a lot, right? So there's no specific number that you can choose on how many ecosystems there are. But yeah, there are a lot of ecosystems, yeah, out there. Are there any other questions for today? Or
All right. So I have no other question.
oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you very much. And that means see you on next week, right?
Yes, that's right. So this Friday is a
Yeah,
holiday.
that's
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Okay. All right then. Bye bye. Yes, send my greetings to mom and then
Okay.
done. Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
yeah.
Let's see you.
All right. Thank you. I'll see everyone next week. All right. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.